know if it's Christmas time or what, but I feel super lucky the past few weeks. Some of my dream labels have been saying yes. And today I have a chance to speak to Brad Henderson, co-running the Blu-ray division of TerraVision. Brad, thank you so much for making this time.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah. So TerraVision, man, there's all this talk about new labels coming out, and this is the golden age of physical media. All this discussion is kind of out in the zeitgeist right now of this niche community. But TerraVision, man, like y'all came out of the gates. It's awesome to watch this. Congratulations, just out of the to start this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like a new label, to people, but it's something that, with Ryan and I, especially myself, kind of working behind the scenes and doing other stuff for a very long time. It's like nothing new for me. It's just kind of newer for the audience. And whenever a new label comes up, I mean, even though like my history and past, it doesn't follow me every single, place, because some people just don't know video labels. They may have never heard of Wild Eye Releasing or Vinegar Syndrome, and that's cool. But yeah, no, it's kind of a long time in the making of kind of wanting to do this, kind of like this idea that I've had, and it was nice to meet Ryan, who shared a very, very similar idea of how to approach a video label. And yeah, it's
Well,
been pretty amazing ever since.
that's awesome. Let's start there. So speaking of Ryan, I want to point people, there's a fantastic interview. I think it was a live show that you and Ryan Graveface did with
Yes.
Ryan on Disconnected that I think is a fantastic intro to kind of the history and the background, the partnership. So I want to point people to that as a way of getting into some of the stuff we may or may not cover tonight. But for the people that don't want to listen to both, so tell me a little bit about just maybe, I don't know, 60, 90-second version, right? But just a little bit about TerraVision. So when you say what we're doing, I mean, there is some staggering numbers of the amount of titles you have under license and kind of how fast you're coming out of the gate here. But as you talk about transitioning out of your old life into this new venture, can you walk us through just a little bit of kind of what that was like and how it got started and where you're at today?
Yeah. I met Ryan in October of 2020. So that kind of tells you how fast all of this,
Wow.
got started. So it was just he was a stranger, and I was just at his record store because my wife and I were on a anniversary, kind of just a late anniversary. Um,
Sorry, and that's called Grayface Curiosities or record. Wait, Grayface Records and Curiosities, right?
this is the Grave Face Records portion. So this is the
Okay.
record store in Savannah. So yeah, we just kind of went because anytime that we're like on vacation, I always like to look, if there's a movie store or a record store, I'm a huge record collector too.
Okay.
So I'm always buying fucking soundtracks and music and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Big physical media guy in general. So but yeah, just because of the pandemic, we had to delay kind of our anniversary. And being a Savannah's very open, like as far as like, just what to do. Everything's kind of outside. There's a lot of nature stuff,
Oh,
and
cool.
this is 6 months kind of like into the pandemic, 7 months. So, and Savannah had, kind of strict, rules, in just the city of, most it made you feel safe if that was something that you were worried about, and
Mm-hmm.
you were taking, cautionary steps. So Savannah was a cool place to go because of the rule following, and just kind of a nice place to go. And yeah, I just went into the record store, and I was just perusing stuff, and I took some pictures of Spookies LP that Ryan put out, and I
Uh-huh.
was excited because Spookies was a film that I acquired at Vinegar Syndrome, which was a big deal at the time, for me, kind of doing that acquisition, kind of, myself. Well, it was myself.
Oh, awesome.
And Ryan came up to me. I had no idea who he was, and he was like, "Hey, you like that movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually acquired it for Vinegar Syndrome." We just started talking. We hit it off. We're just saying weird shit. He told me to go to the museum, which is there's the record store, and then there's like the museum. So I went to the museum there and met his wife. I had no idea his wife was the host of like doing the tour, and then he came in, just happened to be there when I was in the middle of the tour with my wife and kid. And yeah, we just hit it off again, and we just
Yeah.
made sure we kept contact. And yeah, we started immediately working on something like I think it was probably about 4 months in. We were working on a record.
Okay.
Which hasn't been released yet. We haven't announced it. But he was like, I've always been interested in doing this soundtrack. And he said, I just, there's no music. And I said, actually, I have like all like tracks for that because I've worked
Okay.
with kind of the director before and I'm a big fan. So I have all these like tracks unused and, used stuff. And so it was like 55 tracks or something. It was something massive.
Holy cow.
And we are like, well, let's do that. And then we actually got all like we got the music supplied to us again, so it was higher quality, and we did this deal and everything like that. And then we were like, well, Ryan was like, well, what about doing the movie? And it was a shot on video movie. And I said, well, that's doable because, at the time, well, I mean, still at the time, Vinegar Syndrome, you know, wasn't interested in anything SOV, especially like
Sure.
that.
Sure. The
So
whole point is to be do film kind of stuff, right? That's like the
yeah,
whole kind
yeah,
of
it was
mission.
all,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
all film. So it wasn't really a, kind of a competition thing or a conflict of interest.
Hmm.
And so, we started talking about it and it was okay, well let's try to get it. And here somebody else already acquired it and it kind of put us like we're like, okay, well, we got the soundtrack at least. And then Ryan actually said, he said, well, what if we actually kind of did this? Like what if we went after, some films? And he said, I already kind of, he's friends with Chris LaMartina, and he's like, I can actually do like WNUF
Hmm.
as our first title. And I said, well, that's a pretty big deal, man. Like
Uh-huh.
it's a really good launching title. And so at the time, because of my position at OCN Vinegar Syndrome, we kind of just stuck to doing like these really weird, obscure, like shot on video titles is what we were kind of into. And that's kind of the antithesis of like how everything started.
Okay.
And then that lasted maybe a month. And I was like, okay, well, they're not going to be interested in doing contemporary films either. And this is when all the partner label stuff started up because Terrorvision acquiring WNUF was way before it was even released. Because that title was released like at the end of like I think October of 2021. So I think it was a year of knowing Ryan. We actually had the first title out, and
Okay.
we had the partnership with OCN as a partner
Yeah.
label.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, then it was like, well, we could do contemporary stuff. So that's when Norway came into play because I was a big fan of that film at a film festival, and it never had a U.S. release. It was lacking physical release everywhere. I think
It's
aside from like its home country.
it's a big
And
problem with festival stuff right now, right? It's like there's not.
oh no, it's huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
people are always talking about like silent films and black and white films. It's actually kind of worse for films that are like made like now to 15 years ago.
Crazy.
Like those films are on the brink of people like think, oh no, it's new, and it's like, no, 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 that's not how it works. I was like, you have these films that are released on VHS, DVD, like they'll last for a while. We have films that have never actually touched any format. That's incredibly dangerous.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, it's we acquired that, and we had some camp motion picture stuff we were putting out, and we were having a good time. We had like the Love and Saucers documentary, the Blood, Guts, and Sunshine documentary,
Yeah.
Killing Spree, Video Violence 1 and 2. So we kind of had this like weird brand that we were building, and eventually we wanted to grow out of that, because the whole thing that I expressed to Ryan and Ryan agreed with me was the whole like thing of me ever getting into home video, like almost it's going almost probably 10 years now,
Okay.
was wanting to create my own brand, my own label in order just to do whatever the fuck I was into.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't really a brand per se. The brand was not having a brand, you know? So Ryan kind of shared that with me. It's like, well, we like, a love story. We like a documentary. We like a slasher film. We like a shot on video film. We like something contemporary. We like a musical. We like this family film. Like we just like everything. So why can't we just do it all? Like everything that we like, and that's how Ryan has ran the grave, the TerrorVision uh horror LP stuff, is that he's releasing stuff that he likes. We're
Some
not getting
awesome
things.
titles too, like Maniac Cop. Like there's some awesome stuff on there.
Yeah, we haven't went down the road of like getting anything because it's a package deal per se, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing's like contractual. We have to do this or do that, and we've made it clear to distributors. We've made it clear to filmmakers that we're not interested in everything. We're just interested in a few. So don't try to
Yeah.
pawn anything off of on us. That's not what we're about. Every film in the library has to be liked by one of us, preferably both of us. Because I just feel that that's the best way. And not saying other labels operate by just grabbing things, but there are, labels that do just take things just because it is available and it's something that's not been out yet, which is good. And that's their MO, and that's fine. I have zero qualms about that and zero things to say. I think it's great. But I it's basically recreating the video store with the label of having a place of a mom and pop video store, because mom and pop video stores, they bought things that they felt that they liked or that would do well. And it was a very curated selection. It wasn't like a Blockbuster Video, a movie,
Totally, totally.
Hollywood Video, or whatever big chains that you had. It was very, very small. And the video store experience is something that no one, like, even if the video store, I mean, TerrorVision has a video store in Chicago, like, but it will never be like how it was.
Well, I live in Austin, right? Up until the pandemic, we had I Love Video, which
Yeah,
was
there was I
kind of
Love
like,
Video and Vulcan
yeah,
Video. There's Scarecrow in Seattle.
yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah.
cool that those places exist, but the idea and how it worked and operated as a video store back like in the 90s and early 2000s, it will never exist again.
Uh-uh,
Like
uh-uh.
even if you have a video store, like the feeling and just that era is gone, you know.
Exactly.
Um, and yeah, it's just something that we're not enjoy nostalgia in that way. I don't like things because of nostalgia reasons. I like things to make me feel like I'm actually young again. Like, I'm not that old, but there was a special thing about, going with my mom and dad to the video store when I was like, 13, renting two or three movies and picking up a pizza or something, going home and being in for Friday or Saturday night. That was
Yeah,
special.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's really hard to get that back. And the movie watching experience has completely changed since the streaming era came in, which I have zero against streaming. I think it's a great thing. It gets people to watch movies. It makes things super accessible. I will never knock streaming. I personally don't do a lot of it, but that's just me. But I am glad it's there. But streaming has completely changed how people watch movies and how they approach movies, because everything's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Um, so while we do like some streaming deals here and there at TerrorVision, I mean, our sole focus is the physical media medium, because we want that to feel like it was when you picked up a VHS at the video store, or when you buy something. It's the same thing as like if you go buy a book, okay? And let's say you pick up a bargain edition of, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's
Uh-huh.
just this paperback, really cheap, generic cover. because they're
Mhm.
selling it for, 4.97 at Books a Million. Or you can find, a more, meaty edition with, maybe a red binded book that's leather with, embossing, and it
Right,
has the
right, 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 right.
Dracula face, and it's heavy and it weighs like 2 pounds. And when you pick it up, it's like, oh shit, like this is fucking cool. No one's
Yeah.
picking up that paperback and saying, holy shit, this is fucking awesome, you know? And that's kind of how we view, like, working in, having that feeling of when you pick something up, it really feels like you have something special. So that's why we take a lot of pride in the records and anything we put out, really. But yeah, the records and Blu-rays, we're trying to give that experience, and wanting people to take pride in something, that they own and they can display and they can watch and so
Well,
forth and so. I could go on forever, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
just no, it's awesome, man. Just to build on what you're saying. So I have this thing that I've always felt about um let's say some of the OCN titles and some of the Vinegar Syndrome titles and Severin, and now y'all are in this game. So there's this interesting relationship, I think, between people that pirate stuff and the labels that are putting out a lot of the genre content, heavy exploitation content, right? And here's what I mean. I think Spotify proved an interesting thing, which is that people in Europe were saying, we don't believe in paying 20 bucks for a CD, so we're just going to pirate it, right? But if we can stream it for like cheap, for 10 bucks a month or whatever, we'll pay for the music, right? So it's a little bit of a weird comparison, but my point is that I think there's this interesting relationship where if it's like Ant-Man and Quantumania or whatever, the new like big blockbuster release, right? I don't think there's a lot of guilt about pirating it. It's pirated everywhere, right? And there are some people that will say just ardently just like against piracy, so they just won't do it, right? But then for the people that don't care, it's everywhere, right? But if you're talking about Shrigala, right, or Captives, which is two amazing releases that y'all have out, that's not exactly like widely distributed anywhere, right? Like you're going back to negatives and you're going back to like you're finding footage and you're like you're doing a lot of the discovery work to where it's like the first time it's released or maybe the first time since VHS or like, there's a story behind this release, right? And this is what I think is really cool about what y'all are building is that I think that no matter what people view about supporting physical stores or not supporting physical stores or being open to piracy or not. By the way, just personally, I've never pirated anything in my life after 2001 when Napster was king. But my point is just to say that I think you're in this interesting space where it's like you're putting stuff out that is just physically not available anywhere, right? Except for TerraVision. And I think that's really cool because it's sort of like it builds this excitement around these releases that are coming out. That people like I'm on a Discord for Vinegar Syndrome, and and they cover kind of like all labels. It just happens to be that's like the central theme. And when Linnea Quigley's horror workout came out, there's people that were just like geeking out for weeks about this thing. And so at that point, they're not even thinking about 22.99 or whatever it is for the sub. They're just thinking about like I finally have this thing that I've like never had before. Right? I think that's a really cool space that the TerraVision is filling right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing, like one of the things that drives a lot of what we do is, of course there'll be stuff that's been on Blu-ray and then, TerraVision will re-release, but a huge part of what we do and what we want to do and kind of like, I don't know, like our MO, I guess you could say, is just we're very interested in bringing things to, Blu-ray, UHD that have never made, the jump before.
Yeah.
So most of our stuff is, a lot of our stuff is just new to disc, has never seen like even a DVD before. And then, most of our stuff has been, Blu-ray premieres. which I don't think we've released any. Like I don't think we've done anything that's been on Blu-ray before, aside from maybe Blood, Guts, and Sunshine, because the director did a self-release through like his Kickstarter. But that doesn't really count because it's a self-release. I'm talking about like something that's like authored and pressed in a quality fashion, I guess you could say.
Sure. Like a
So
real release.
yeah, most of the stuff that we have coming out and will be coming out is stuff that's brand new to disc. Jumping from VHS to Blu-ray, UHD, whatever it may be. We even have some lost films that we've acquired that have never actually been seen on any format. So it's a wide variety of things. Also bringing stuff because, as I said earlier, to kind of circle back, is that there's this thing with films that are 15, 20 years old now. Even movies that are coming out right now, they get picked up for streaming services only, and sometimes those licenses are only 3, 5, 7 years. What happens after 7 years? What happens if the streaming service goes out of business?
Well,
And then the film's just it's there, and it will, it never even had a DVD. At least with a lot of this older stuff, it had VHS, it had DVD. There's
sure.
these other mediums, but you could lose a lot of films if some of this stuff isn't on home video, and that's one of the other things that we're doing. That's why stuff like Welcome to Hell and Cube, that we've announced, those are newer films, but they're not old, but they don't have a US release. I mean, Welcome to Hell, at least Cube had, I think, a Japanese Blu-ray out, I think last year, but Welcome to Hell has no physical format whatsoever, not even its home country. And even the director, she said that I never thought in a million years that my movie would actually be on any disc.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? Like there's this huge disc. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but we were talking to Jonathan from Big World Pictures a couple weeks back, and that guy spends most of his time in festivals, right? That's where he finds a lot of these releases.
Yeah.
And and it's just amazing to me. Like think about you're going to a festival, you're picking up a movie. He's going to a festival, he's picking up movies, and there's like 20 movies that nobody's touching. It's just crazy to me, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of our titles that we have that are coming down the line. I've been going to film festivals for probably over definitely over 10 years. And there's stuff that I saw at festivals that I've never seen like a physical media release of anywhere. And
some
it
of the
drives
movies are good
itself
too.
crazy. Oh yeah, no, these movies are excellent. Here's the thing is they do so well at festivals, but then, our and this what it goes back to having, to circle back again of the content that we have. We just have so much content every week that is
Yeah,
poured in onto our laps between,
right.
I mean everything. You could say books, music, your life,
Sure.
movies, physical media stuff on streaming. You can't keep up with everything. And then before you know it, 1 week is a month, and 1 month is a year, and then 1 year is 3 years, and then you just forget about it. And it's very
Exactly.
easy to. I'm a huge fan of a lot of this stuff. And sometimes I'll just be, I'll be sitting here, working throughout the day, and I'll think, I'll type a word or I'll see something. And I'll be like, oh shit, that fucking movie that I saw, 10 years ago.
Right.
What the fuck happened to that? And I'll look it up and I was like, oh my God, it never actually came out. That's insane. And that gives me something that I'm going to work on now. Like I'm going to find out, what happened, who owns it, can we do it? And then that happens all the time. And it's like a never ending list of stuff that we're constantly adding,
Well,
titles that we remember, or the same thing goes for renting stuff. You rent stuff at a store, at a rental store when you're a teenager, and you love the movie and you rent it a couple times, and now I'm sitting here and it's like, man, that movie just never made the jump from VHS. Like what happened? Like where is it? How can I fix that? So
you talk about replacing the video store, and I think that's a super interesting kind of metaphor. But there's another thing I wanted to ask you about because I remember, like, let's say 2001, 2, 3, 4, like kind of when I I was in college. I was like really getting into movies, right? Like I told you before we started recording, I lived in Dallas. There were two different avenues for me to explore. One of them was if Anchor Bay or Blue Underground put it out, they like had my attention, right? Like I didn't buy everything, but like they had my attention. I was curious about it, right? But the other thing was you had like Sony Pictures Classic, you had Troma, you had at the time before we found out about the Weinstein craziness, you had Miramax. Like you had studios that sort of had a reputation for like everything they did was a sort of high quality, right? And what I think is cool about what TerraVision is doing, and maybe what Radiance Films is doing across the pond, but like let's just focus on TerraVision, is y'all are coming out and saying like I think you're kind of becoming almost like a proxy studio in a way. It's sort of like fine, you didn't produce the movie, so I guess you can't say it's like a studio, but you're kind of building that brand of saying like we're going to go out and curate from festivals and from classic films and from all this stuff. And if you like the first eight things from us, you're probably going to like the next eight, right? Like you're probably going to like the next, what are your subscriptions going up to 50 at a time now,
Yeah, yeah, no,
right?
I mean, I hope that's the case. I think the only drawback, which I don't think it's a negative, but I can understand why people view it maybe that way, is that there is a wide variety coming from us. We're releasing, this year we have a few silent films that we're doing from, the early 1900s. We have, shot on video films that we're releasing. We have a few art house films. We have some brand new horror films that just came out this year. We're restoring stuff from film, and a romantic comedy we have in the works from the 80s. I mean, we just have everything. So the thing is like I don't I the best way I can describe it is that the label is for people. The label's for everybody, pretty much. I hope that at some point we release a movie that you love. I can understand it not being for everybody, but I'm looking at this as, this label is curated to our taste and for people that just like love movies in general. Like I'm talking about will watch anything and just take in every film. And then not every film that we put out, I'm gonna say you'll like, because that's no, everybody liking the same thing is boring. But I like that we're doing stuff to give people to kind of show them things that they maybe have never watched before or would watch. With a subscription, it's kind of fun because they're going to get it no matter what. But we also don't take that to our advantage. We pay, we are respectful. We're not want to release something just to release it. Everything we touch is curated by us and a thought goes into it. And we're just not dumping something in your hands, or it's something that maybe, hey, we didn't really like this movie all that much. No, everything is something that we thoroughly enjoy. So the cool part of the subscription is when you do sign up, we know that you're going to get it, because talking somebody into buying something or even watching something, even just tweeting about a movie sometimes, it's hard to get people to watch things, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying this is a negative, but a lot of people do, they don't like to go out of their comfort zones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They'll rewatch the same movies over and over, which is completely 100% okay. And I don't have anything negative to say about that. The only thing I wish that a lot of people would do, and again, this isn't mean to push buttons or make anybody feel bad or any gatekeeping, is I do think a lot of people are closed-minded, and I do think a lot of people don't like to experience new things, and that's their own prerogative. But TerraVision is here to maybe hope that you jump out of that shell a little bit and maybe give something a chance. When you see the romantic comedy pop up, you're like, man, these guys are fucking called TerraVision. TerraVision, like that's horror. No, not really. It's just everything. Like TerraVision is just the name. Yeah, sure. It's going to be really funny when we get into some weird stuff and people are like, why is this coming from the name TerraVision? Uh,
Uh-huh.
well, that's because it's curated by us and we love it. I mean, a lot of stuff that we do. I mean, I would say 80% of what we're going to release is genre or genre adjacent stuff. But there's going to be about a 20% in there that's just a really oddball that it's like, I can't believe that you guys are releasing this. Not in a bad way, like it's trash, but it's just like, wow, this is like, this doesn't seem like something that should be on the same shelf as video violence or cat,
Uh-huh.
you know? And that's how it's going to be. Like, there's going to be a lot of weird times where some of these movies, this movie that has a budget of $500 is going to be sitting on, a world-renowned film that we're releasing, which we do have a lot of those. We have, later this year, we have some pretty big classic films that are coming out that I think people are going to be really, really shocked that, that we have, because I think, television's still in a growing phase where a lot of people don't know who we are, and that's fine. I think by releasing a lot of shot on video stuff in the very beginning, even though actually I shouldn't say that because we really haven't released that many shot on video movies. I think there's just that like feeling that we have because WNF is not really shot on video. It's presented like that. The only shot on video movies that were released under OCN was Video Violence 1 and 2.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, because Norway is of course shot digitally. Killing Spree is actually originally shot in 16 millimeter, which it's thought to be SOV, but it's not. Um, I forgot what else we did. Love and Saucers, which is obviously not. So I mean, at this point now, because we have horror workout, we have captives, we announced Cannibal Campout. Those of course are shot on video films. We have some more coming out, but again, a lot of these titles that we're working on and putting out right now was stuff that we were working on during the OCN umbrella. We haven't really got into the crazy ass fucking shit yet. So
That's exciting then.
yeah, it's going to get really and I think sometimes when I don't really explain myself too well when I say things are going to get weird. That doesn't mean weird films. That means like you're going to really look at and like, holy shit, how did television get this? Well, the answer is that I've been at this for a very long time, and I've been, my love for cinema goes for with everything, every single movie ever made. There's or not every single movie, every single genre, every
Yeah.
single like subgenre, whatever it may be. I have watched something like that. I have liked something in that genre and I just love it because my friends make fun of me all the time. I'll watch anything. Like I just don't really care.
But
Like
I
if
think
it's
that I think
something,
that happens though, right? I don't mean to cut you up. I think that happens. Like I've noticed this too for me. So I've kind of like loved movies for about 20, 22 years, right? Even though I took a little bit of a break when I was starting a family and some businesses and some things. But for the most part, I've watched a lot of movies. Last three, going on 4 years, I've watched about 350 a year. So not like, I mean, I know there's people that watch a lot more, but still, like it's been a pretty steady. And like what I've noticed is that like I used to make fun of what's a good example? So some of the stuff coming out from Saturn's core,
yeah.
um, or some of the Donald Farmer stuff. I would have not watched that 10 years ago. Like I would have like watched 5 minutes of it and been like, what the hell is this? But but like, after you see your like 2000th movie or 3000th movie or 4000, like at some point you're like, okay, I don't really want to watch the same type of thing again. Like I kind of, it's like you start getting into different genres and different types of movies because you just want to experience something different, right? It's like there's a lot of discovery there, and all of a sudden you go back to Debbie Does Demons, and you're like, fuck, I kind of like this now. Or you go back to like something, whatever. Like you go back to like SOV stuff, and you're like, you know what, this is kind of cool. Like I see what they're trying to do here, right? And so I think your point is well taken. There's like this path that people go on, I think, as they get deeper and deeper into movies of like, Shawshank Redemption's the best movie ever made. And then you watch a thousand more movies and it's like, I mean, it's okay. Like it's not to shit on Shawshank Redemption. I mean, the movie's fine, but like you just see like what people like you see the vision more, I think, and like what directors are trying to do. And I think that becomes more exciting almost after a while, rather than getting so concerned about like the execution of it. It's like, oh man, they were like, I remember, sorry, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, but I just saw Curse of the Fly. Have you ever seen that? Like the
Yeah,
third,
yeah.
like I don't know if I would have liked that 20 years ago, but now I'm like, dude, they put like there was like a barn full of people that were fucked up because they were trying to send them across the continent. Like this movie's crazy, and like so I just look at movies differently now, and I think that's what's cool about what you're saying is that there's going to be a romantic comedy and some classic Hollywood stuff or whatever. I don't I guess I'm putting words in your mouth, but some classic movies that are coming out right next to some SOV stuff, and they're all going to be sitting on the shelf together under TerrorVision. But that's cool because it's almost like again that you're curating this stuff, right? And you're saying there's something in it that you resonated with, and so you're kind of self-selecting the people that are going to find and and they're going to share like this similar taste with you, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's also like a big thing for me is that, being a curator and, I did, I've, did acquisitions for multiple video labels. I have worked at film festivals, watching and picking films. And of course, what I do now, it's one of my favorite things is to show people things because I've said this a million times on different shows and podcasts, but it's something that I live by is that you can never watch a movie for the first time again. It's something that's obviously you just can't because it's just how it is. Um, the closest thing to rewatching a movie for the first or watching a movie for the first time again is watching it with somebody that hasn't seen it, so you can kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
variously through them, and that's something that I love. So that's kind of the respect that I have in going when you subscribe or you're buying something from TerraVision. It's something that we get off on that because it's like, oh shit, they're actually going to buy this, they're going to watch it, and then they're going to say something about it, and that's the coolest feeling in the world, whether it's positive or negative. It's always cool to see kind of somebody watch something because you said something.
Oh yeah.
Well, when they like it, obviously that's a big plus. If they don't, it's a little bit of a bummer, but at least they watch it. And I think a big thing of that is that some people will go out, and I hope that's this case with TerraVision, is that there's some black and white films. We have actually a few black and white films that we're putting out, and I know that there's like a whole generation, multiple generations, that like think black and white is just too old and maybe not watch it. Same thing goes with foreign films. People just don't like to read subtitles. It's just how it is.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people swear off foreign films, and distributors know this, and that's why a big portion of these films that are kind of lost to time are foreign, because the foreign market's very, very hard. And people can sit there and say, "Oh, I watch foreign films. I love foreign films. People love." No, it's not true. Those movies might be well liked, but foreign films just don't sell well. It's just how it is. And it's the same thing as when you watch a lot of foreign trailers. Just go on YouTube, watch some foreign trailers that aren't edited by American studio, or watch the ones that are edited by American studios, because mostly there's never any dialogue in them.
Oh,
They
it's
they
just
just
like
they
in a world.
Yeah, yeah, like there's a voiceover or
Huh.
there's just an imagery. It's just how because they want to they don't want to tell you it's foreign, you
Yeah,
know.
I see.
And it happens all the time. And I mean, I hope that you like foreign films because there's a lot of foreign films coming from television. It's a huge thing that we're doing. It's a lot of foreign films.
It's funny. My friends and family give me crap because everything I watch has subtitles on it, even English. Because I just don't have like a 5.1 surround, blah blah blah. Like we've got kind of a small house, and my 6-year-old's asleep in the other room. So like I'm watching movies on like volume 10 or like 11, and I has to have subtitles because a lot of times I'm just barely kind of getting the soundtrack in the background, and I'm barely catching the dialogue. So for me it's the same. But I also grew up overseas. In fact. that might be a good segue. So I wanted to ask you about Srigala because I actually grew up in Indonesia,
Oh,
and
wow.
at least for high school. And there's not a lot of um, representation of Indonesian cinema, although they have a wild history of of
Yeah.
really over the top kind of genre cinema. So how did you just to kind of focus on my one title for a second? I got super excited when I saw Srigala coming out. How'd you get connected with that? How'd you see that?
I saw Srigala for the first time, I mean, years and years and years and years ago.
Okay.
I bought a bootleg VHS probably in my teens.
Uh-huh.
But it didn't have subtitles or anything. Um, and I watched it, and I used to go to these car booths, basically these tape trading conventions. And my mom used to take me when I was in my teens, and you would just go to these places with like skeezy people working out of suitcases and stuff. And like a lot of like tapes just with like no labels. And you could go to like you would get some certain tables and you would say, you know, like, hey, do you have any like, German like gore films? And be like, no, 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 but I got a bunch of like knockoffs, and it's like Turkish films and Indonesia and Philippines and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, cool, cool. Like, they're like here's a German knockoff of Texas Chainsaw, and
That's
here's
awesome.
Hellraiser knockoff from Indonesia, and it's and that's how I got into Shrigala, because it was a knockoff of Friday the 13th, even though it doesn't really follow the formula all that much. It does a little bit, but obviously Friday the 13th is a big inspiration for it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I first saw it, because it was a knockoff, and I watched it and I was just like, yeah, I was like, this is really cool. It's weird, from what I can tell. And then years later, um, I was able to track down a copy with subtitles. I would say maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And
Okay.
then I kind of got more about what they were saying. I was like, okay, this is really cool. And yeah, I was, obviously, doing acquisitions pretty much all my life. And Indonesian films is like something that I mean, I love all countries, but I agree with you. And Indonesia has a very wild history of
Yeah.
making movies and how they attempt things, and they're big risk takers, and just with their action films, their horror films, they just kind of all over the place. So yeah, Srigala started a bit ago, and it was just something that I was like, I needed to focus kind of on one thing. And just because there's just so much, and working when you work with a lot of foreign studios that really aren't Italy or
Yeah.
France, like the archiving in other countries is really difficult because their
Sure.
resources are very limited. So they don't have like everything that they need. So Shugali was a little tough because it was we went to Rappy Films, who's actually they're still in business. They still make films. They've remade some of their own titles recently, like Satan's Slaves and whatnot. So I was talking to the Simtani brothers there, which they basically run their dad is still alive, Kuj Gope. He's interviewed on Srigala. He's one of the creators of the company, and we were talking about Srigala for a while, and it was just something that they never really touched before because it was pretty obscure for
Okay.
even for them, because they made their success off these other films and whatnot.
Sure, sure.
And we started talking about getting the elements, scanning the elements. We scan, it's got scanned in Jakarta, so working out the license deal, scanning the film because they don't ship anything out of their country. They're not allowed to.
Okay.
So we had to use the nearest scanner, which is not, even their scanners aren't like the best. Even though Chagall looks pretty good, they have a process at Jakarta. So that was, restored by them.
So you
And
couldn't even put it to like Singapore or something? Like it had to be done in Jakarta?
right, yeah, no, it can't, it had to be
Wow.
done. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so a lot of limitations. So you have to work within their limitations and what they're allowed to do. And other countries are kind of like this too. So you just have to find out what is the best and then do it that way. So the elements for Shigala were really in really, 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 really bad shape. So it was a lot of work on that end. It took a while. And then, you know, me seeing the film, I've always noticed that I brought it up to the Santanis. I said, is there another cut of the movie? Because it seems like all these crazy ass movies you guys made, there's like a bunch of like gore and stuff. And then all the kills are off screen. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I was like, was this made for television or something? Like, what's your rule? They're like, oh no, we think there's a longer cut of it. So they were looking for that cut footage and eventually found it. And then that
That's
was,
awesome.
reinserted into the movie, which is I think it's like 2 minutes, like a little over 2 minutes, probably like 2 minutes. I did have it timed. I want to say it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but I don't know. Some cool nerd's going to be like, it was actually 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Yeah, sure. I think it's 2 minutes. That's a difference. But yeah, we found that, and then we did a bunch of interviews, which is cool because like doing those interviews was really tough. And Barry, he's such an elusive dude. Like, I don't know if I think there's only like one. I could only find like one interview done with Barry Prima, like at all. So how that happened was and this how I got in touch with Rappy Films is that they're kind of off the grid. Like, they have like
Okay.
a very non-functional website. Like, they're very kind of closed off aside from
Okay.
yeah. So it was really hard for me to get in contact with him. And I'm friends with Timo, who made um The Night Comes for Us, and he's doing the Train to Busan remake over
Oh,
here.
cool. Cool.
So he's Indonesian filmmaker and it kind of, new blood. And so we've been buddies for a while. So I just, text him. I was like, hey man, I was like, him and Joko has made like, the Satan Slaves remake. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, you guys are like in business with Rappy. Can you get me in touch with the dudes there? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he hooked that up, and he got me in touch with who I needed to do. So Timo's actually been a big proponent of actually getting some of this stuff done. The same thing with Barry Prima's interview. He knew his agent. So because Barry's off the grid, he owns I think he owns like restaurants or hotels in Jakarta. So like, or apartment buildings, something like that. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so he just doesn't, he walked away kind of like from all this stuff. But I think he's like trying to slowly get into it. But yeah, we had, Lydia, Dorman, and then of course Scope, who was the producer of the film. So it was like 4 interviews, which is like, I think it was really great because a lot of getting interviews for foreign films is one of the hardest things to do because you're just not connected. And there's not like a network. There's not like an IMDb sometimes for these other like cultures and people, and like
Yeah.
sometimes these actors just kind of like completely disappear. They don't do conventions like some of our horror
Yeah.
actors,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Asian
Sure.
actors. So yeah, it was the Santanis were really good at getting Lydia and Dorman, and I mean, Lydia still acts, so that wasn't like a crazy thing. She's still doing movies every year. But she, like, everybody was just super cool about it, and they were excited to talk about Srigala because I don't think they've ever talked about it. I think Barry even says, I don't know if it's in the cut that we used, but in the raw footage, he says, I don't think I've ever actually talked about this movie before.
I love that, man.
And
Uh,
he had a lot
yeah.
of stories, like he learned how to scuba dive because of Srigala, because of all the scuba scenes. Like, he took scuba lessons, and then he's like an active scuba diver still. And that's actually what got him into it, was Srigala.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, just like cool little things like that. And but yeah, I mean, Strigalo was years in the process of trying to get that done. You know,
So this is it couldn't have gone better in terms of like exactly how I wanted you to talk about that. Thank you, because it's like you were reading my mind. Because this is what I kind of wanted to do. I wanted to focus in on one and then pull out, because the crazy thing to me is it's not like y'all came out with, we've spoken to a lot of labels now, right? And they're like, yeah, we're trying to do 3 or 4 movies a year, trying to see maybe one a month would be like an ultimate goal. But you've announced, uh, shoot, what's the number? You have like at least 50 movies or 58 movies or something that are coming out this year alone, right?
Yeah, I think, it's more than that, but some of them are box sets.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're gonna try to do it. I think it's 62 like releases, not
Holy
62
hell.
films. 60, because there's a movie that's a director focused that has 4 films. There's
Oh, cool.
another 4 film batch. There's some double features. Yeah, so I mean, it's probably like around 72 movies, but I think it's like 62 that we have slate. I don't know if it's going to work, because another thing that, and what I mean by that is that we're very very small at what we do, like
Yeah,
a couple of us behind the scenes. I kind of do the acquisitions and producing and paperwork, and I mean there's a lot of dumb shit that goes along with this. It's not actually all like glamour and everything. It's a
sure.
lot of stress and a lot of like work and spreadsheets and data and making sure that things are just working. So like it's really tough. Like there's a lot of just days where it's just shit you don't want to do,
Hmm.
that has to be done. And it's basically Ryan, Chloe, who's a godsend, his wife, who's the most lovely woman in the world, aside from my wife, of course. Myself, Justin Beam, which we've recently hired, and then Earl Kess, who does all our art. And we have like a couple other people that are helping us with art right now. We have a couple other people that helps us with editing. Of course, Michael Keane, who I've worked with for several years now. He does some freelance stuff for us. I would like to bring him in more, of course, with helping me, because him and I work really well together. But yeah, we just kind of want to grow just a little bit more and then, spread out the work. But yeah, right now it's like, one title is like 100 hours for me, like easy to get out. So, and you have to think like that's not 100 consecutive hours. That's like 100 hours spread over like a year or something. Because it's like
Right.
sometimes like, even deals can last, just back and forth talking can literally last like 6 months. I've done talking deals for over 3 years.
What is a talking deal? I mean, like literally just like talking about a deal.
Yeah, just like back and forth.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, we were working with a foreign company, and it was 3 years. Um, it was actually, I think it was 3 years to the signature date of the contract. It was, yeah, 3 years from first talking to them to actually signing the contract.
So maybe you can help with this. This is one thing this has just been like an open question for me, and I don't know if this is like trade secret. Tell me if you can't talk about it. But like, you hear all the time, right? Labels will say, "Oh man, went after that title, can't get it, because the rights holders are not being cooperative or whatever," right? But like what you just said is something I want to dig into a little bit. Like the Rappi brothers are famous, or the Rappi Studios, whatever, are famous for being difficult to work with, right? But just knowing the right people, persistence, um, patience, like all this stuff paid off, and now you're able to put out one of their films, right? And maybe it's not even fair to say they have a reputation for being difficult to deal with. I'm just curious, I guess.
Yeah, no,
Question.
they weren't difficult at all. I mean, it's many factors. So there isn't really an answer, but I can give you a rough answer. So it's just all about approach and tact. on how you do this, because you have to be kind of a people person. You also have to have the knowledge, and this is where it's important that, what, because I've had like people come to me before and they're like, "Oh, is there a job I can do what you do?" And it's like, no, you can't actually, because there's actually a lot of history that goes along with this. It's just not willy-nilly, like, thinking, "Oh, let's do this movie and do it."
Uh-huh.
That's not how it
Uh-huh.
works. Like you have to know sometimes the politics behind
Right, right,
where
right.
it's made. You have to know how the relationship between maybe that country and the US are. You have to maybe understand how they view America. You have to maybe look at the film to see, like, was it pirated a lot? Was it, did they lose money on this movie? So you have to know about film history. That's what's important. So you have to look at film history. You have to look to see how that movie was treated. You have to look, there's so many different factors. You just can't be like, hey, hey yo, like, hey guy, hey dude. Like, you can't do that. You have to treat it like you don't know who you're talking to. So
Mm,
it's all about respect. It's all about patience, tact, all that stuff. Because I think a lot of times with what people say is like, well, let's just take Spookies for example. I think Spookies is a really good thing because I saw for years, even on people were talking about DVD requesting Spookies. And
mhm.
when the kind of the boutique label thing started up, and like Scream Factory and Spookies was always being wanted and requested. And I saw it so many times, not possible, not possible, not gonna happen, not possible. And I said to myself when I was at VS, I said, well, why isn't it possible? Like, what's happening? Like, what is the actual
Mhm,
definition of that? And
mhm,
I just said, well, I want an answer for myself. So I started, and all it was tracking down the producer, because it was is no one could actually find him because he had a generic ass name,
okay.
and he was off the grid. And after several months of looking for him, I found him in England. And I it was a really big chore to actually try to speak with him because of kind of where he was and what was going on, just health wise with him and everything. And I finally got to the right people to help me, and you know uh, just talk him, with him, the family, getting everything, sorted. And it took several months, but we were actually able to do it. And I called, my partners at Vinegar Syndrome, and I said, hey, I said, I think we got this. Like, I think we're good to go. And yeah, we did the deal, and we had the material, and yeah, and that's how Spookies was done. And it was just all about like persistence and not listening to what people were saying. Because like the thing is that there's a lot of people online that like to talk about film rights, and they have no idea what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Because what they do is they go by like who released it last and what they think or what they read. And I'll tell you right now, the forums and stuff, and when they talk about film rights, they're wrong. Probably, I would say 80% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple dudes on there that just constantly talk about film rights, and they're always wrong. Um, and typically when they are right, they're talking about like something that's owned by like Disney or like Paramount, or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, they're typically right. It's the thing is why they're wrong is that they don't actually investigate it themselves. Just because a company released a movie, 30 years ago doesn't mean they still own it.
Right.
It could have changed hands. It could have went back to the producer. The producer could have sold it. He could have went bankrupt if owned by like an estate, could be like a law firm. Who knows? Like, film rights are everywhere. There's no easy like way to figure it out. It's, I've this is what I say. I've contacted a filmmaker one day and turned around a contract the second day. I've signed a movie within 24 hours. It's also taken me 3 years for certain things.
It
So
reminds me.
no
There's
rhyme or
this.
reason.
there's this whole profession in Texas because Texas has some weird laws where I live in Texas. There's some weird laws about people own the land. They don't own the land down. So like they'll own what's on the surface, but they don't own what's underneath, right?
It sounds
Because there's so
ridiculous, but okay.
yeah, there's so much oil that was in Texas, so people would basically sell like the grass up, right? Versus the mineral rights is what it's called. If it's like under the those are two separate things, right? So you have this over the last 200 years, you have this transition of deeds over mineral rights. And so there's this whole profession that just says, I think your family's entitled to some mineral rights from 150 years ago. If I find them for you, can I get, 10% or whatever, right? And it's like, sure. Because it's just like free money if they happen to have an oil well pumping through that property, right?
Yeah.
And it's not exactly the same, but it's messy, and that's what kind of reminds me of what you're saying. It's like film rights are messy because you may have somebody who came in and bought a catalog, right? And that movie just got transferred as part of like a catalog sale or something. So you just there's so many reasons why a film could transfer hands back and forth. You don't really know until you start doing the homework on it.
Yeah, yeah, it's I've it's I have found film elements and film rights in the weirdest places. You
There was a
know,
yeah,
it's always a ride. And sometimes, like I said, it's easy. I've turned around a contract in the same day and signed a movie within 24 hours. And some like I'm still working on things that I have worked on for several years still to
that's
this day
crazy.
where I haven't signed anything. And, it's not like you talk to these people every day. Sometimes you're talking to sometimes you're talking to an active producer who's still making movies. And, you contact them and it's like, oh, like, hey, this is really cool. Like, yeah, let's do this. Let's look at a contract, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, you send them the contract and they're like, oh, I'm actually going to be shooting like in the next like several months. So like, we'll do this when I'm done. And then like, they get back and they're like, okay, the contract looks really good. I'm going to send it to my lawyer. And then like 2, 3 months rolls around. And it's like, oh, my lawyer, likes this, but we want to change this, this, and this. And it's like, you change it, then you send it back. And it's like, okay, this is cool, man. I'll get back with you. Then another 2 months happens.
All of a
And
sudden, the years come
it's like,
by.
yeah. And it's like right now you're like at a year. Right. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're like in the, final stages of like the cut of the film and we got some festivals coming up. Let's here's the contract. I signed it. Well, how do you want to be paid? Oh, I'll have my, my assistant get with you. And then like weeks later they get back and then you do the transaction. And it's like, okay, what about the film material? Oh, that's, at Photochem. Okay, well, we gotta like call them, we gotta arrange like a pickup and everything. And it's like, okay, like, oh, hey, we only have actually reels 1, 2, and 4 and 5. We actually don't have three. And it's like, well, where's three? Like, what the fuck could happen? And then you go back to the like this is what I'm saying. It's like ongoing. This is what it's like. So when I say like things could happen over a 3 year period, I'm not talking to that person every single day for three
Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
I may talk to them a total of 12 times over the 3 years. But it's just a lot of back and forth because sometimes people are busy. But like I said, sometimes you just get a filmmaker that's sitting at home and it's like, oh, I can make some extra money. Cool, let's do this shit.
Sure, sure, sure.
And it's done. Like it's amazing. And I wish everything was that easy. But also, it's kind of nice that it also takes a while because if we literally signed everything that we are working on right now, one, we would be bankrupt. Two, because we wouldn't be able to afford it all. And two, we would just be so weighed down. I mean, we're weighed down as it is. Like the thing, it's tough because I try to like back off a little bit because it's like, okay, we have like 350 movies we have to get out and
Oh my
like
gosh.
it's going to take years already. And so like, and plus you're constantly signing new stuff, new things comes across your plate. I had this filmmaker that reached out to me. This is one of the craziest things. This actually comes out in a couple months, but I had a filmmaker who has a brand new movie that's coming out or it is out. And they were like, "Hey, man, like I really liked everything that you did through the years at your companies, because they like kept an eye on what I was doing and
Okay.
like what I was like, how I was presenting things. And they're like, we always loved your work and we want you to do our film."
Okay.
They're like, can you do like a home video release, like a Blu-ray? Because we already have a streaming deal, we have another DVD deal, but we want you to do Blu-ray.
Yeah.
It's like, are you fucking kidding? Like, are you serious? Like, that's awesome. Thanks for thinking of us. Because, like, even though like I have a long history, TerraVision's very new to everybody.
Okay.
And they were like, yeah, this would be cool. And I was like, well, that's kind of an honor. Like, thank you so much. So we took that film, obviously. And so now that pushes every film that you accept and you move up, you push another one, you push
Yeah.
everything back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's just trying to like kind of weigh it out. But just because you sign something doesn't mean like it needs to be out like immediately. Sometimes you sign a film and it could be years until you get like the material. We signed a film last year, and I think, let me look. The film actually tomorrow. It's funny. It arrives in New York tomorrow because it was in South Africa. And it's taken about 6 months to get those reels from South Africa to New York and then New York to California.
Wow.
And we have no idea the condition of them. We have no idea what they look like. So they need to be, obviously they're going to California. That's where our lab that we do all our cleaning. So they need to be clean. They need to be inspected, and then I'll get an inspection report on that, and I'll go through the inspection report, make sure, with the lab to make sure there's nothing that's glaring, splice count, if there's any film damage, what needs to happen, the condition of the film, and then we can talk about scanning it. So it is an inner positive. So if the inner positive is actually in good shape, we'll be able to do maybe a UHD. So then we'll have to prep for scanning for that. And then obviously the restoration, the color grading, all of that. So that release probably won't be until I would say late next year, and we signed that deal, I think probably almost a year ago.
Hey,
You
this
know,
is. I mean, we. I asked you for 30 to 45 minutes, and we're over an hour in. So I could. It's obvious I could talk to you for hours. I really. But this is one thing I did want to bring up, though, and this is the thing that I think really jumps out to me about as I've been watching your journey, right? So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life in terms of professionally. I'm working for a bigger company now, but that was mostly just because my wife begged me to do that before we had kids and kind of have a steady income. um, because entrepreneurship is very kind of make or break, right?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but there's something that happens when you um, start a business that's very difficult, I think, to communicate, and that you've done a pretty good job of breaking it down tonight, although I don't know if it's necessarily been called out explicitly. So that I just want to spend a second calling it out explicitly. What you've talked about over the last hour or so is all these tiny decisions that you have to make almost instinctually because there's no time to think about them and like process them, right? As you go through the day, you can't do an analysis on like every decision you have to make. You just kind of you just have to trust your gut a lot of times, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, there's a lot of risk taking. I mean, there's a risk, it's inherent in risk just by taking a movie on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
something like Strigawa, from start to finish, like you have to, and this isn't me whining or complaining, but something like Strigala from start to finish, like you got to take in all the years of work that took and the amount of money that it took to get that disc out is like 3 years, two and maybe 2.5. I don't know, but anyways, it's definitely over 2 years. 2 years and about $50,000. That
Yeah.
that's how much it took to get Strigal out. And you hope it does well. Shigala actually hasn't done like incredibly well, but that's also because a lot of people don't know what it is. A lot of people have never seen it. They've never even heard of it. So it will do well over time. But like something like that, we just don't know how it's going to do. It's a huge risk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It actually worse than we thought it would, but again, like sometimes it's just the wrong time. That sometimes things are released, they'll take a few months to catch on. And then you have something like horror workout where it's like, Ryan was like, "Hey, we should do horror workout," and I was like, "Okay, I'm 100% on board. I think it's a great idea. I love it." But do you think we can actually sell a 60-minute parody workout video? And he was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I was like, "All right, let's fucking do it." And here the thing sold, you know, uh, incredibly well. It is
So
a
out in like minutes, right? I don't know. I mean,
a
like,
bestseller,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So, but again, like horror workout was insane because horror workout was supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be easy and clean and somewhat cheap, but it wasn't because it took about 2 years to actually get everything together.
Jeez.
And then we found the master tapes because originally um, there wasn't a master. So we were just going to use a release tape and
Okay.
just transfer it, which is fine. Shot on video, it does degrade a little bit. But I mean, sometimes you just really don't have a choice. And then we
Mhm.
had an opportunity where we actually went to the producer and he had these reels. And then and then Ken, the director, had the music. And then we're like, oh shit, like we can actually, and when I say reels, just this beta SP master.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's still tape, but it was 3M tape. So we actually had that, we sent it to our lab, who can also do tape. And they processed it and they said, man, this does not look good. Like it's caked with mold. We don't know what to do. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay. I was like, I, did this for wildfire releasing already. Like I've dealt with tapes and molds. So, it's a weird process. It's actually a process of baking, kind of basically in an oven, not like a conventional oven, but it is heating it up because the tape actually won't burn or change. It's just hot enough to like heat up the mold so it can be, one knocked loose and then also brushed and
Oh,
properly
shit.
taken care of. So we had to do all that process at our lab, which is a very delicate and time consuming process. And then when the film was, transferred, it had inherent flaws. You just couldn't help it because of the tape damage, what the mold has done. So it wasn't very good, but it was better than a release tape. But it wouldn't have been good as a release tape if we just put it on the disc. We actually had to do some work on it. So that's the reason why there's three different presentations on that disc. There is, the 720, there's like the 1080i, and then there's an AI upscale. And so there's one where it's just actually the transfer with a little bit of cleanup. There's one that basically improves the picture by the frame. And then
Mhm.
there's the AI upscale, which is like a new technology that we tried out, which looks pretty good. But it can give it the actual shot on video feel of watching it at that time period with the 60 frames per second.
Mhm.
So we just did a little bit of experimenting on that because it was such kind of a clusterfuck. And I was afraid to just put it on a disc because I was afraid it wouldn't look good. So we went through different processes of the presentation, which took even longer to do. And yeah, that was a grueling process because with like Copperhead, we've actually found the tape masters. There was actually two tape actually no, I think there was actually three now I'm thinking about it. but only two were usable and they looked identical. And we actually thought about putting both on the disc, but we literally ran them side by side and there was no way to tell what the difference was.
Oh wow. Okay.
We had one tape master that we transferred and it just looked incredible. Oh my God. I still think Copperhead, and I've seen people talk about this on forums, on Facebook, on Discord, is that they were like, was this really shot on video? And it's like, yeah, it was. It just looks really fucking good. Like it's insane. Like there's times that Copperhead looks like film
That's
because of
awesome.
how it was shot and just the presentation. Like that tape was in actually 100% perfect condition.
Wow.
Like and we just transferred the tape and we did a little bit of work on it, not a lot, and then we put that on the disc and it was super fucking easy. And I was like, man, fucking horror workout's going to be even easier. And here it was,
Two years
we're
later.
ten thousands of thousands tens of thousands of dollars in debt of trying to actually bring this fucking thing to life. But the thing is that the reason why the presentation's never been done like that is because, and this isn't a knock at the company, but 88 Films put this as a bonus feature on their disc for Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, their
Okay.
Blu-ray. But they literally used a release tape because this version had so much mold and it was damaged. No one has touched it. Even Ken, who put out the DVD himself of the movie
Okay.
years ago, didn't use this master because it was in bad shape then.
Oh,
And that was
interesting.
like
Okay.
20 years ago.
Wow.
So, yeah, if we didn't do that, it would have been gone forever. It is, and it actually is gone forever. That process that we used, and we just couldn't help it. And that was the risk that we had to take, is that once we were done with it, it was actually destroyed because it just fell apart. It broke once it was ran through basically the transfer machine. It just started eating everything up, and it is unusable ever again. And that
Wow.
sucks because now the negative's gone. But it's the best that's ever going to look. And as long as we keep those digital files alive, those ProRes, HQ 422 files, that those MOVs, we will keep those alive. And, luckily it is video, so it's not something that can ever be improved with picture.
Yeah, 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 right, right.
That's literally it. Like it's fucking done. And it sucks. I mean, this does happen and it's rare, but yeah, that tape is completely destroyed. And same thing with the audio. So we actually found the original music tracks, which we were able to do, and we found the actual tracks for the film, which was separate from the tape, which is typically not something that happens. So we were able, and this is the crazy part, is that horror workouts actually 5.1, because we were in, usually shot on video is obviously not 5.1. It's
Right, right, right,
because the audio is baked in to the tapes.
right.
But this, actually had a separate audio track, so we were able to send that off and have 5.1 created for it. And along with those tapes were the music isolated, so we're able to do the soundtrack, which we've done. Not a CD, we did a cassette and we did an LP.
That's
Being
badass.
the CD for Unsolved Mysteries did well, there may be a CD for Horror Workout coming down the line, but that's not really decided yet. But yeah, we were able to save all that music that John Volich did, which was cool because John passed away years ago, and he's an old Romero alumni, and
Right.
just a really like cool guy. Died very very young, and yeah, we were able to save that music. So the whole horror workout process that we bitch about, we were able to do so many different things, other than saving the tape, creating a 5.1 track, and saving the music, which has never been released. Like that's a huge, huge thing. And it was yeah, and we're very proud of it because it took fucking forever. But I can't think of it ever could be any better than it was, other than maybe some additional interviews of some girls we couldn't find. But we did an interview with Ken, did an interview with Linnea, then we did an interview with Cynthia Garris, who's Mick Garris's wife,
That's
who
awesome.
did who's in the film and then choreographed all of it. So she did that, and then I did a commentary with Ken and Linnea, and then we had all the archival stuff that Ken did for the DVD, years and years ago. So it was just turned out to be a really beautiful package, and the support from David and Linnea and Ken and Cynthia was just kind of very overwhelming, and they were very on board. So I mean, it was just a really wonderful. But the behind the scenes was a fucking nightmare. I was so stressed out every goddamn day working on that thing,
I mean,
and
at least it hit and sold well. At least it kind of was like worth it in that case, right?
yeah, yeah, no, it was definitely worth it because it's our biggest seller, believe it or not. And yeah, it was a great process. But like it's weird because a horror workout takes around the same amount of time as Srigala. And so when people think, oh, it's just tape, sometimes tape's harder than film. That's just how it is. And at that point, like the work that went into the Srigala stuff was very time consuming as well, but it wasn't as crazy as the horror workout stuff. And any distributor will tell you that does VHS, like shot on video transfers correctly, because there's easy ways to do it that's cheap. And it looks okay, but I don't want something to look okay. I want it to look the best.
Hmm.
Um, is that sometimes it's harder for tape than film. But yeah, it's like it's weird that Shrigala and Horror Workout are on that same level, but that's just how it is. And I mean, not and here's the thing is like everything's hard, like End of the Line. That was years in the making because I was trying to get End of the Line when I worked at Wild Eye
Yeah.
um, for a while, and I became good friends with Maurice, and we talked back and forth, and when everything happened with TerraVision, and then we did our separation from OCN. Like, and the line was a huge one, and luckily Maurice is very techy. He kept up with everything. He had his remasters. The only thing he didn't have is he had the DA88 tapes, which is the audio, and it's an older format, and we're able to send that off and do 5.1 on that. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
something else that we do at TerraVision that I don't see a lot of companies doing, is that we're actually doing 5.1 sound for our to have like a separate channel for that. And that's
Hmm.
something that a lot of people don't do. But I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that stuff because I have a home theater system and I like 5.1.
Yeah.
And yeah, these movies aren't really made to do that. But if we actually have the tracks and we're able to create a 5.1 or 5.1 track and utilize, your speakers and stuff, then why not? And End of the Line is a perfect example. That's one of the more frightening movies I've ever seen. And watching between 2.0 and 5.1 is like night and day, because it's just the scariness level and the sound design and the screaming and the stabbing and all this other shit that happens in the movie. You can kind of really feel it. And it was funny because I got the disc in, because I did the QC on my computer. And then when I typically don't watch discs when they actually come in to the physical like final format because I've seen the movie like 200 billion fucking times, so I don't care to
Right.
have to watch it again.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually put End of the Line in because I wanted to hear it, on actually a sound system with the disc and everything. And I was going to do a test, and I ended up watching the entire movie
That's
because
awesome.
I was just like, man, this is so fucking cool. It's insane that we were able to do
That's
this, you know.
awesome. Um, Man, the not surprising at all. I love how much your passion shines through. I mean, we've only really talked about Srigala, horror workout, and now into the line. But I mean, I know if we had another couple hours, we could go into each title and there's crazy stories. And I love that passion. I'm gonna take a stab at this question and then I want to hear your answer as well, because the question comes up of, man, like there's a lot of this is another subscription to do, right? Like I wish like I want to do it, but it's just sort of expensive and like here's another subscription. that's now coming out into the marketplace. Like, why do it, right? And so what I tell people when they ask about TerraVision, sort of like, is this, is this subscription worth it or whatever? What I tell people is absolutely worth it. Buy, if you're nervous, buy a title or two, kind of make sure you vibe with what's being put out. I mean, don't jump in, totally blind, right? Get a couple titles, make sure you vibe with what's going on. But by doing a subscription, if you can afford it, what you're essentially doing is kind of funding the release of like future titles, right? So it's like it's sort of uh twofold. One, you're getting this curated list of cool titles to watch from a label that you trust, but also you're sort of like going back to the startup analogy that I've been using, the entrepreneur kind of thing. You're sort of, if you buy a subscription, you're kind of acting like a funding arm for the ability to continue to support what TerraVision's doing and like grow, have them put out more titles and have the releases be better and everything that they want to accomplish, right? So how how does that resonate? Am I close?
Yeah,
How would
yeah.
you?
I mean, it all, like, here's the thing, any purchase is a good purchase. Between a sub and buying individually, we love each time it happens. But subs are, nice because it's like one of those things where you get that, we see that money immediately, so we can immediately put it towards everything else. Because the thing is that TerraVision doesn't really make any money. It all just goes into the next releases, and
Yeah, exactly.
and that's just how it is. Just because we're so new, like we can't, like, I mean, of course we pay ourselves because we have to live, but the thing is that a lot of what we do is just funding the next one. I mean, Ryan and I have those conversations where it's like, okay, like we have to do this, this, and this, and this, and that's why, like, we take pride in everything, because we want people to see something and they know what they're getting, and it's not going to be like a knockoff. It's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be, light. It's going to be heavy. It's going to feel like you're actually holding something. So yeah, anything works with the sub, with the subbers. I think it's good that, we do have five different tiers. We have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. If you're a little uneasy, like, I don't know what these guys are doing. They're releasing like these really weird shot on video fucked up movies, but then they're, doing some other stuff like Shrigala. So I think the best way is just to kind of keep an eye on what we're doing, and then you can make the decision, because once you kind of know the vibe over the next, like, probably couple months, you're going to know what we're about. And a lot of stuff is going to be completely off the wall you've never heard of. And then there's going to be stuff that you've heard of that you maybe forgot about. And that's just how things are. And then we have some really popular movies coming where you're like, you're gonna be like, hold, like, how the fuck did you guys acquire this? And it's like, and the answer is that I've been in this game for a while, so I kind of know what to do. I know the people I need to talk to. I'm friendly with multiple studios and have my hands in a lot of studios, and it's just trying to work that out. And it's we're taking, and I think the big thing, and I actually don't think I've said this yet, and I probably need to. Um, TerraVision is taking some major swings, and some of them are landing, and it's crazy because I never thought it would, because we are this like little label that has released shot on video movies, to a
Uh-huh.
lot of people. But I mean, we obviously have a lot more. We have a even relationship with Screenbox, which has been really wonderful. And we have more movies coming out that we've, picked up from them, which is like new and old. But we're taking some major swings, and that is like risks that we're taking, and we're also like made some crazy offers on some like really really big movies, and we've actually like won in a way. Not
Uh-huh.
really, not like bidding wars or anything, but we're like, hey, could we possibly do this movie? And the studio's like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, I can't believe it. Like, there's
Oh
no
yeah.
fucking way. And it's really exciting. I wish I could obviously explain more, but um, like we really have some like world renowned films that are coming out that are incredibly well known. That is not going to be expected, and I'll tell you right now, they're not horror. That's the other thing.
Well,
Um,
quick question on that. This is going to play well into a subscription thing. So this episode's going to drop on July 7th. So that's when this is hitting, although we're recording a little bit before then. Um, the titles that you're talking about, are they going to be a part of the next 50 releases?
um,
Are they going to be a little bit beyond that?
yeah, no, they should be. They should be in the next. They should be in the next 50.
Okay.
Because yeah, I would say in the next 50 because they should be out November, December.
Okay.
Because we have some we're doing something special coming up for August, September, and October. And then November begins kind of a different path. You'll know more what I'm saying when October hit or August hits.
Okay.
And then November to December kind of change a little bit from what like the norm has been.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody's going to be upset unless you're like only wanting horror, which it will definitely not. Like a lot of stuff that's coming out November and December are non-horror, and some of it's like non-genre. It's like, it's like when I say genre, I mean like, obviously like sci-fi, horror,
Yeah,
like
yeah, 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 yeah.
it's some art house films and some really bizarre like things for television to attempt.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like probably going to be um November, December, but then we have a studio deal that we're working on right now with a major studio. And once we ink the deal, we kind of have to get the films out quickly. So that's going to shift some stuff. And when I say quickly, the license isn't too long. And with that particular studio and that license, the start date is the signature date. So we're like, it's like a ticking clock.
Oh,
We
so
have to
if you
get
have it
things
for like
out.
2 years, for example, it's like once you sign, it's like that's when the 2 years starts.
Yeah, like so like a little behind the scenes stuff, every contract's different. So like if
Right.
we do a contract with an individual, like if I go to this, so and so guy and his movie hasn't been out for like 20 years, I can go to him and say, "Hey, let's do this deal. We'll pay you the money now, and then here's the contract, and actually the street date doesn't start until or the contract doesn't start until the street date."
Sure.
So, I mean, we're not going to sit on the movie for 10 years, but we can sit on the movie for a year or two
You have
years,
more flexibility that way. Yeah, yeah,
because the
yeah,
dude
yeah,
already got paid. He's not going to get, and plus the movie hasn't been out for 20 years. So what other deals he's going to make?
yeah.
And we're also very filmmaker friendly. So a lot of our deals are just for North America.
Okay.
So that's the opportunity for other
Oh, I got you.
companies and
Uh-huh.
also filmmakers to make more money. Because we're just honest, like, yeah, if we got world rights, that would be cool. But like the part of what TerraVision's doing right now, we're just not out there in other countries like that. I mean, we do ship to other countries, obviously, and Diabolic buys our stuff, Orbit and everything, but we're not doing like huge, huge numbers in other fucking
Yeah,
countries.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
So if
Yeah,
the producer has an opportunity to make a German deal for like 10K on a movie, why the fuck not?
right,
It's more than we're ever going to pay. We're not going to use German rights,
right, right,
so
right.
a lot that, and that's another thing where I always talk to people to get a region free player. With a lot of television titles, they will be region A. And the reason why that isn't because it's like a big choice. It's actually filmmaker friendly. So that way the filmmaker can go to another territory and sell the movie there,
That's cool.
and they can do their edition. It's all about putting money in the filmmaker's pocket. They're the one that made the goddamn thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a very non-greedy side to television that we talk about briefly, but there is like a huge thing where we're very filmmaker friendly and filmmaker first, which is not a way to get rich.
Well,
This isn't,
but
we're not
this,
doing this to make a lot of money. We're doing these to get the film, the films out and to take
yeah,
care of the people that made them. That's the important part. I mean, we could do it and we would probably make more money and it would be smarter. But the whole idea of creating this company is kind of some of the basics of creating is what I said to Ryan. I said, distributors all through the history from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, even today, every time you talk to a producer, every time you talk to a director that owns this movie, I can't even, I would say 80% of the deals I start with, like, hey, Mr. So and so, I'm from TerraVision. I'm in the US. I would like to, talk about maybe releasing your film on home video over here. Do you own the movie? Do you own the rights? Do you own the material? And like, oh yeah, yeah, I own the movie and everything, but I'll tell you right now, I've been fucked over so many times by
yeah,
distributors,
right, 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 right.
and that's how the conversation starts. And already you're the bad guy because you're a distributor. So, you have to work them in. You have to tell them what you're doing and, you try to talk them into it. Because if you're a big studio, you could say, oh, yeah, I'll give you, $5,000 for all rights. And they may be like, well, I haven't made any money off this movie in 30 years, $5,000. Yeah, sure. But if we did the deal for maybe a less amount or that amount and just say, we just want US. And, the thing is that what happens in this business is that we'll release a movie at TerraVision in the US, and then we'll have like, let's just take Turbine Entertainment, for example, that I'm buddies with over in Germany.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
That I'll get an email from one of those dudes. I can't remember. I'm actually drawing a blank on his name. I feel so bad. But he would email me and say, "Hey, dude, like you guys released, so and so over there. Is the German rights available?" Be like, "Yeah, dude. Here's the filmmaker's information. Go for it." And then they'll do a deal. Then the filmmaker gets more money, and now the movie gets distributed in Germany. So not only is that bad for television? But I'm joking. But what that happens is that gives the filmmaker more money, which is great because they made it, and then also the movie gets distributed on another format in another country that we're unable to do, and so
There's a,
that helps the
yeah,
film life. Like that's another disc out there, and that's what this is all about.
that's
And
cool.
I'll tell you right now, TerraVision is in it for the wrong reasons in this game. There is a way to make money in this, and we do make money, obviously, but we're in this for the longevity of the movies. We want these films to survive. We want them to be out there. We want them to be seen, and we want to have fun doing it. And we also want to take care of people. That goes for filmmakers, actors, whatever. It's a very passionate business because here's the thing: is I'm a filmmaker too. I've made short films. I have some screenplays in the works. I'm doing some stuff behind the scenes for my own thing. When TerraVision, this isn't a known thing, so this is somewhat of an exclusive. TerraVision produced a movie last year, and we haven't been open about that yet.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So we submitted to festivals. We'll probably bring it up eventually here in the next like few weeks. But Ryan and I produced a movie during the pandemic that we were able to do. So we're very into all of this for the films and for the filmmakers. So making money's cool. We'll make it and we'll get there. But yeah, you know, that's a reputation that we're very happy about because that's spreading quicker than everything else is that film. And here's the thing is this industry is so goddamn small. If you make enemies with somebody, you better bet your ass you make enemies with a lot of people. Because everybody talks, especially indie filmmakers. So when you take care of somebody and then that person's making a movie, we've already had that happen where it's like, hey, I actually did this deal with these dudes and like they actually paid up and everything's straight and we actually did well. Maybe you should take your movie there. And a lot of filmmakers, they look at everybody's a little bit different. Everybody likes to make money. because that's what you want to do, because making money makes your next movie, right? But the thing that's important is that there's so many like streaming companies and so many companies that will just dump your movie like on streaming services without saying anything, and nobody fucking watches it. What's the point of making a movie when no one watches it? Even if your movie makes, like, let's just say you did a deal with like a streaming service for $1 million. That's incredible. Way to go. But what if no one watches it? That's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, man, I could easily talk about that question for an hour. Because it's the creation in general is like there's two components to it, right? There's the quality of it, and then there's like a temporal aspect to it, right? Of like not everything hits at the moment it's created, right? So it's just difficult to know. Like this is the common theme amongst like so many art forms, whether it's theater or paintings or books, novels, movies now we're talking about, right? Like um y- you know, bodies. I'm just going to take a weird example. Bodies came out this year in the theaters, right? Kind of mixed reviews. Very
yeah,
divisive movie. I'm one of the few defenders of that movie. I think
I
it's
love it.
awesome.
I just rewatched it with my with my wife. Yeah, no.
Oh,
I
awesome.
love Rachel. Is it Sanaa? I think she's one of the funniest
She's,
people in the world. So
her roles, she chooses the craziest roles, right? And she sells it too.
wonderful.
But like, it's just so hard to know when something's going to be viewed as the way that the director intended, right? So I think what I'm hearing in what you're saying, which I love, is that by preserving these movies and by going to the painstaking process of like putting them in the best picture and audio format and on a disc and saving the file, archiving this digital file, making sure it's preserved, you're just like giving them an opportunity to be discovered in their time, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's beautiful. That's why like I have, well, my collection oscillates because I have limited space, but it's around 5,000 titles, and that's kind of the max. That's why I say it changes until we move into a bigger place. That's about how big it can get. But over time, it it's I've gone through like generations of different stuff, DVDs and now more Blu-ray and different boutique Blu-rays and stuff. But like I want to view it as like a library. And I know it's maybe cheesy or semantics, but like I want to be able to have stuff up there that I'm proud of and like I can pull off in a random time and just watch it and like kind of revisit and dig into the features. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it today, but like the intention is to see every behind the scenes documentary or like if there's a question about, you know, one of the directors of Srigala, like Indonesian filmmaking, go back and watch that documentary and hear them talk about it and have that like resource that I have, not rely on streaming. So I guess I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I love what y'all are doing. I love the vision. um, I don't want to say I was surprised by your passion, but I love the passion. It's really cool to get to spend some time with you.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah, the only thing I can think of is, I guess, as far as what's next, like, are y'all gonna do the whole partner label and sub label? Like, are y'all gonna kind of, is that something you're doing, or are you gonna go mainline, TerraVision? Um, have you thought at all about the future, kind of how you're gonna grow?
Yeah, yeah, the future's already planned. And we will be unveiling things as we go along. Um, it's not our place to announce certain things because we don't want to take away from other
Okay,
people.
okay,
But
okay,
some
okay.
things are in the works of distribution. TerraVision, we Ryan and I have discussed having. I don't really believe in kind of the kind of sub labels per se as far as like an imprint. For us, however, TerraVision, Ryan and I have discussed creating one other line of things if people kind of revolt in certain things that we do, to have kind of a backup. And plus we're in like a lot of music stuff. So, we've been talking about certain like documentaries and music documentaries. Would another imprint be good to have that for these other things
Yeah, yeah,
that are
yeah.
very, very off-brand for
Okay.
even TerraVision?
Okay.
However, those will never be not included in the sub. It will just be an option. So like, and we're not talking like we're gonna have another label with like 350 titles coming down. It would be very, very small, very sporadic.
Okay.
Um, but we would always be able to have that option to include it. So, kind of how we did, if anybody's a vinyl member of TerraVision that's listening, when you sign up for the vinyl subscription, when Copperhead came out on LP, just because of how weird and obscure it was, we weren't sure if people would want that as because with the kind of the club with the vinyl, it's only 6 releases, so it's a very smaller number. And it's also a lot more expensive because like, the records are like 30 $35. So anybody that was a clubber for the vinyl, they actually got an email asking if they wanted to have Copperhead included.
Oh,
With their
cool. Okay.
stuff.
Gotcha.
And a lot of people did that. I think it was like 80% or something,
Oh shit.
which was actually a really high amount. So if we did something of like a music documentary on another label, basically the clubbers would get that email saying, "Hey, we have this thing. Do you want this in your subscription?" And then we could do that,
Okay.
and that's something that we'll offer. But it will be kind of, but that is also something that's not anything set in stone. We literally do not have anything planned right now. Nothing is in the works. It's just being talked about behind the scenes because the thing is yes, we will grow. And I know how these things grow. I've been
Yeah,
in this for
exactly.
a while. I worked I started doing stuff at Vinegar Syndrome in um, in 2015 is when
Dang.
I started doing freelance stuff and doing things. And I watched that company grow. I mean, it's still growing, but I from my time of 2015 to basically the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, that company grew so rapidly and so fast and doing different things. I obviously still have very good relationships with all those guys. I never left on any bad terms with Vinegar Syndrome, and if it wasn't for Vinegar Syndrome, I would never have this opportunity that I'm doing because I learned everything I learned about kind of QCing and scanning and restoration. I learned at Vinegar Syndrome. So it's like invaluable,
That's
like
cool.
information that I learned from everybody there.
That's cool.
Um, even from the things of wheeling and dealing, like I learned that too. Um,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
so yeah, it was like I got to see the company grow, and I know how it can grow. I also got to see ups and downs behind the scenes, so I know what to prepare for. I know how to counter those things. I know how to nip them
Mm,
quickly.
mm, mm, mm.
Because I got to see it. I got to work through it. I had I was faced with those problems. I saw my team faced with those problems.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, we just were very open. And here's the thing, and this is what I tell everybody, I'm never ashamed to say it, is I don't know everything. I will never know everything. I learn something every single day. I always go into a project with the utmost kind of respect and and effort. But if I don't know something, I will not fake it. I will always ask for help. I'm never too proud of that stuff. And but I'm also very determined. If I don't know how to do something, I won't say, "Oh no, I can't do that." I'll say, "I don't know how to do that, but I'll fucking figure it out." Because I know
Yeah, I mean,
somebody that knows that. So I always take on the job. I never say no. And that helps a lot. But the whole thing is that TerraVision, even though Ryan's been in this, he's had a record label for 25 years with Gray Face Records. He, had the TerraVision label for, 6, 7 years. Obviously the video side is just, essentially, I mean, it is, going on 2 years old. But I mean, it was so slow to start. We really consider kind of our start of everything at Santa Claus. That's kind
Okay.
of how we look at
Okay.
it. December is that's because we were really doing things on our own at that point.
Gotcha.
When we were with OCN, that they were great and they held our hand and they helped us. When we cut that cord, in that sense, then everything was falling on us to do,
Right.
knowing
Right.
how to do, and it was a very, very different ball game. So we consider that kind of like the rebirth, I guess you could say, of TerraVision. So it became a different ball game. So we have a lot going on. We have a lot that we're trying to build, and that's kind of our start.
Uh-huh.
And but it's also cool because we're curating it, we're moving it in directions that we want to move into it. And being that we're so small, the decision makers are myself and Ryan for the most part. From a creative side, and obviously, it's late, so I'm losing some words here. Like Chloe on kind of the distribution side,
Uh-huh.
like she'll make a decision, like, oh, but if we do this and this and this, and she'll
Mm-hmm.
step in and be like, no, that's a fucking nightmare for the warehouse. We can't do that.
Uh-huh. Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
because our
Uh-huh.
warehouse is small. We only have like 2, 3 people in it.
Right, right, right.
So shipping's a lot. And as we grow, we'll have to add more people in that. We have to
Mhm.
have a formula. We have to have something built in because the bigger we get, the more titles we have, the big of a nightmare it's going to be behind the scenes. And I got to see that, websites crash, things
Right.
sometimes take months out to ship. Like those things happen and those things, and I know how those things work. So hopefully we'll be able to not actually deal with those headaches full on or unexpectedly. We kind of expect them to get
Try
bigger.
to, but yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's like even with like Justin, I sometimes write things up and I'm like, I sound like an idiot. Can you make this sound better? And Justin will rewrite the synopsis to make me sound smarter. Um, or
Justin's the
just
best. Yeah,
yeah,
it's awesome.
Justin's wonderful. Him and I have been friends for a very, very, very long time. So it was kind of nice and we talked about working together for years. And I
That's
brought
cool.
him in a couple projects at Vinegar Syndrome, but we just could never do anything, long term. Um, but yeah, it's a very collaborative effort behind the scenes of trying to figure. I mean, it even goes with Earl, like doing artwork. Artwork, Earl's a very big mastermind behind that stuff. We hardly ever turn down anything. But we do have a lot of discussions. Sometimes he'll turn something in and it's just like horror workout. He was like, here it is. And I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And then we had something like Some Guy Who Kills People, and we just could not get the cover for that right. We went through so many variations. I came up with the ideas. I was sketching things out, and we just couldn't do anything. And finally, we landed on something we all liked, and also the director did, of kind of the cover. And I think it kind of sums up the movie. Well, I think the problem with Some Guy Who Kills People was the title. I think the title actually made the trouble of creating a cover. And we didn't like any of the existing covers, neither did the director. So, we didn't want to use any of the UK stuff or the DVD that was released over here because I didn't think it vibed with the movie that well. But yeah, it was like that was a huge process. But Earl's wonderful at what he does. But like I said, we all kind of work in our own zones. And when we have to collaborate, it's really great because we're all on the same page. We have the same, mission. We have the same outlook, and we want to see things happen. And I think that's the way it is. And also, another big portion of this, and I'm sure you've done, I saw your interview list. So we're also like very transparent of what we're doing.
Yeah, I can
There's a
tell.
there's like a lot of secrecy in this business, And I just have never liked that. And so we're just very open about what we're doing because, you know, I feel that if we obviously not going to say everything, because there's just some things that are on a need to know basis and you don't need to know. But as far as like a customer, we're very open. Like anything a customer needs to know, we're going to tell them. We'll obviously tell things that happen behind the scenes because it's cool, things that we can talk about. I mean, there's certain things that you just can't talk about, that does happen. But for the most part, we're very open about the process and what we're doing. Like we don't really have anything to hide. Or
Yeah.
we actually, it's not that we don't have anything to hide. Um, but yeah, we're just very open with the audience engagement, and we want people to be happy, and we want people to trust us. Even if it's a movie you don't like, we want you to be able to trust us with it. Trust us with your time, trust us with your money, trust us with your, just trust that you're putting into us when it was funny when we did actually, the different tiers because for a few months we had just the ten movie tier,
Hmm.
and we
Hmm.
started it out because we really weren't pumping out too much. And then things started looking up, like for in the next couple months, and like the month of July is going to be insane. Um, with our announcement. We have two announcements tomorrow, but that's small, but they're really going to increase here in a little bit. And, we were like, okay, let's do these different tiers. And when we actually did the tier that was 50 that day, more people signed up for the 50 than anything else. And I was very, very taken back by that because I honestly didn't expect anybody to sign up for the 50. And I think the very first day there was like 20 people that signed up for it or something,
Wow,
which
that's
is which
great.
is small. It's small numbers, but that's big to us, you
Yeah, hell
know.
yeah.
But I mean, we have a decent amount of subscribers. Like, I don't know, it's like I think like 500 or something like that.
Damn, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
wonderful,
and
man.
and like I said, I will say the rebirth starting in December, January for that. And I don't really feel that we've made a lot of waves until horror workout. And here's the other thing, and I don't mean this in a negative way. We're very much releasing movies that no one's asking for. So like, that's another thing that we face. It's like, people ask for the same things over and over and over. And I'm not saying it's a negative thing. But I mean, people want these movies. But it's like no one was asking for End of the Line, but when we released it, it did actually a lot of, I mean, End of the Line has sold really, really well. Horror Workout sold well. Um, something like Some Guy Who Kills People was funny because no one was asking for that movie. It was kind of forgotten about. And it was like that was a huge project because the director did all like the behind the scenes stuff. Jack was very enthused about releasing it. So he actually conducted all the interviews. He shot everything.
Okay.
He and I organized everything together, and there's like, man, I don't even know how many hours of extras are on that disc. Some Guy Who Kills People, there's like maybe like 15 different line items that are extras,
That's awesome.
so it's crazy. Like there's like multiple short films, concept stuff, bumpers, trailers, making of documentary interviews with like, yeah, Kevin, I mean everybody was interviewed for that aside from Karen Black, who's sadly passed away.
Right,
But yeah,
sure.
it's like no one was asking for Some Guy Who Kills People. No one's asking for that on forums or anything. But that's the like, kind of the thing that TerraVision is going to be doing. We do have a lot of those films that no one's asking for, but it's stuff that we really, really, really love. Like I saw Some Guy Who Kills People, like 10 years ago, and I fell in love with it. So it was a really, really great thing to be able to work with, well, Ryan and Jack on getting that out. Um, and that's the beauty about some of this stuff is that you do surprise people. Like the movie we have coming out tomorrow that we announce. No one, I don't even think people know the movie exists, to be honest with you. I saw it at a festival like probably for it's like 7 years ago. 7 years ago, and it didn't do anything. I never heard anybody talk about it, but I loved it. Then it got retitled for digital, and then that was terrible because it had an awful, awful cover that was completely misrepresented the movie.
Uh-huh.
I even joked with the director because we were working on the slipcover, and I really love the original artwork that they did um, for their theatrical like screenings that they did for festivals. I loved it, and he was like, "You want to do something new?" And I was like, "No, man, I fucking love this like original artwork that you all did." And Earl actually used it, but also like did something new and repurposed it, and it looks incredible. But we were joking. I sent him a link of the artwork that the streaming label did, and I sent it to him as a joke, and he was like, "You better not fucking use that." And I was like, "No worries, man. I was just just joshing around with him a little bit."
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right, right,
But
right.
yeah, it was just kind of funny that. But yeah, I mean, we also that's the other thing we do is we include the filmmakers if they want to be included with everything. I mean, Jack was even he did part of the Q like he was even QCing the disc. Like that's how far Jack worked with us. Jack
That's
Perez for
awesome.
some guy who kills people. Like
That's
not
awesome.
only he shot everything, that he did, but he edited all the pieces. We worked on the sound together. I sent him the test disc and he watched it every piece and he wrote
Jeez.
back notes of things that he was concerned about and things that we might have to fix and we fixed those and yeah, I mean, Jack was full on process and like he signed off on all the paperwork. So again, like we're very filmmaker friendly and we want people to be happy because the last thing I want to do is an upset filmmaker. That's terrifying to me that, you trusted us with your movie and then we fucked up and now you're pissed at us.
Sure, 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 sure.
That's, stressful. I mean, not everybody's going to be happy. I'm sure we'll piss somebody off eventually, but we never intend to. We always go in with the right attitude, and honestly, there's been times if there's red flags, we'll back off the movie. Because I've dealt with filmmakers that have been horrendous, like terrible, 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 and that's why I like to talk on the phone with people and do a little email and kind of assess the situation because I've walked away probably with TerraVision. I've probably walked away maybe from 3 movies already
Okay. Oh wow.
because of just dealing with the filmmakers and their fucking like how they're crazy. And like the thing is we might be able to release the movie, but the problem is like the aftermath of dealing with that. Like we're just not in a position to do that right now. Like, well, I mean, we may go back and try to get it, but sometimes people are unhinged, man. Like, I mean, we deal with crazy, you see crazy people on the TV all day, you know. Sometimes those are filmmakers, and it's tough. But yeah, it's that. I mean, that's a story for another time. But
Part two, the perils of dealing with people.
oh
Um,
man, there's a lot. But yeah, I mean, we try to make it the best. Here's the thing: is uh, I've been in home video close to 10 years. Before that, worked as a pharmacy manager with the public. I dealt with a lot of sick people. I dealt with dying people. I have had, I worked in hospital. I was one of the code blue. So anybody with cardiac,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would bring, those crash cards you see in movies. There's usually a pharmacy person with them. I've seen hundreds of people die.
Okay.
I've dealt with grieving families. I've dealt with people that are just being told they only have a certain amount of time to live. Because even as in pharmacy, you still have to be there, like with certain things, with, doing a med reconciliation to, evaluating certain things, working with insurances, whatnot. I have worked with people all my life. So I know how to deal with somebody that's a little unhinged. I know how to deal with somebody that's grieving. I know how to deal. So I think that helps me a lot with kind of just the personal one-on-one. And it helps me gauge things, helps me gauge people. So I'm a very good people person. Like I know how to approach things. I can have that, we talked about that earlier about like how does this country view it? How do the people of this country view us? Because America, there's a lot of bad shit that surrounds it. So, you have to go into each conversation, each interaction, you have to be delicate with it. You have to know how to speak to people. And I think
Yeah,
that's why I've been pretty good at acquiring things, because I go at it lightly. I'm very aggressive and I'm very persistent, but at the same time I'm also respectful. So I
there's a
think
word
that's
that's
helped me a
there's a
lot.
word that's come up in different ways throughout this whole interview. Just being empathetic, and I think that's shown up in the way you talk about the way you acquire rights, the way you care about the filmmakers, the way you think about the audience and your fan, like people that are buying from you and how they're going to react. Seems like you lead from empathy, and I think that's it's an honorable trait, something that not everybody has. Um, and so it's nice to hear you say that. Um, look, uh, I'm sold. I
I
know
know, I
other people.
appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I know people listening are really going to hear this passion, especially combination of your pedigree plus the passion that comes out just from what you're doing. I think it's no surprise that you're coming out of the gates fast and really making a splash. So, Brad, this has been fantastic. Love to have you back on after some time after you hit your 100th release, which sounds like it's going to be about 3 months away at this pace. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
no, it's just I don't even know how to. I just tell people kind of prepare for the unexpected, because that's kind of how we're doing things behind the scenes. It's like certain things pop up and we're like, oh, fuck it, let's do that.
that's awesome. I
Like,
love it.
I mean that happened with End of the Line. I mean with the sound, is just like, it's like, fuck it. If we have like the disc was done. Like we already authored, or we already QC'd everything, and Maurice found the tapes later. And he was like, "Oh, I like found these like, the DA88 tapes." And I was like, "Oh, well fuck it. Let's just do it." And we delayed it a couple weeks because of that. Cannibal Campout. Cannibal Campout was supposed to be released in March, and we just announced that a couple weeks ago. My dog's snoring if you hear anything.
No,
Um, but that was supposed to release in March. Well, what happened is that when we acquired it, we were working on it, and we're like, okay, let's start on extras. We started the extras like in January, and then we were a little late to the game, but everybody we reached to did want to do an interview. So when March rolled around, we already had the slipcover made. So that's, if people pay attention, that's the reason why there was a gap, a number for a while. Is that like Cannibal Campout's like number, I don't know, like fucking 14 or something. And everybody got all these other numbers, and we had a couple emails like, what's going on with this number? It's like, well, that's just, it's been delayed. And that's the reason why we delayed it, because we had a ton of archival stuff, but we didn't have anything new. We had nothing new to put on the disc because no one wanted to do an interview.
oh,
Everybody
okay.
said no. So we ended up just saying, well, fuck it, let's just do some crazy shit. So we got Casey, Jess, hey, stop snoring. We had, Casey, the homicidal homemaker, do a Cannibal Campout like pie recipe or chili recipe. Chris LaMartina and his wife, they did a kind of a horror hosted segment for Cannibal Campout called Shocktail Hour. I did a commentary with my buddy Zach Carlson over SOV, for Cannibal Campout. And we just did that because it was like, we can't release this with no extras, like no new extras. That's fucking stupid. I hate doing that. And
Uh-huh.
I've always like I've had been in situations where I've had to do that before at other companies. And I'm just like not a fan of that. At least one new thing, and it's even if it's something like old, like we have, some silent films coming out. Like I said, ain't no one alive of those things. So there's
Right.
no interviews. So having critical commentaries, stuff like that. We'll have a couple things, and those discs will be lighter. But we never want someone to pick up a disc and be like, "Did you guys even try to do anything new?" That's never going to happen with TerraVision. We're always going to have something, whether it's something we have to fucking make up, like we did with Cannibal Campout. But all that stuff came out really nicely. It gave us a couple months to be creative. And the thing is if that disc is released and that stuff gets talked about a lot, if people are like, man, I really love the Shocktail Hour, then we'll have Chris and Melissa, we'll hire them to do more shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
that's the cool part, is that we're bringing in some new blood on these things and trying some different things, new things. And yeah, if they stick, we'll continue to do it.
Well, this has been, I think what this has turned into, which is exciting for me, is the passion for TerraVision, some insight into how you think and what you want this label to be, and kind of how you're philosophically approaching Blu-ray distribution, which is exciting. And I think it's something that people are going to feel very comfortable to support. So I really appreciate you making time for this. I know it's pushing 1 in the morning for you now,
No, no,
um,
no, it's fine. Yeah, no. My
but
wife is texting me and she was like, I'm trying to go to bed and you're not in here. So
uh, but Brett, thank you. And I can't wait for this to drop, people to start commenting and getting excited for the label. And I can't wait to watch kind of what y'all become, because I know it's going to be great. So I really appreciate you making some time for this.
I know I appreciate. Yeah, I hope so too. I hope that I'm just not thinking in my own little box. I'm hoping I'm speaking. Here's the thing, and I'll leave you with this, is that um TerraVision's a business at the end of the day, but Ryan and myself, we've always loved movies. We've always loved music. We've always loved books. So Ryan's physical media stuff, and he has so many different, um, like just his museum, for example.
Mhm.
Ryan doesn't have anything fake in his museum. That's something that he's always been very proud of. That nothing is that when you go in there is fake. I mean, he has the Flavor Aid packets from the Jim Jones massacre. He has, like 230 some John Wayne Gacy authentic paintings. He has John Wayne Gacy's brain, actual brain in his museum. So he very much likes real things and collects things and preserves things. So he comes from a very, very heavy background of preservation, because a lot of the stuff gets thrown away and he's able to save it and put it in a museum. No matter how you think about it, if things shouldn't, nothing's being glorified, but it's about preserving that stuff. The same thing with books, same thing with music, same thing with movies. So every step that we take into this is a very much of a passion, because we come from loving this stuff. I started buying. My mom bought CEDs, which if people are
Mhm.
unfamiliar with that format, that was a format that existed. We bought VHS tapes. We bought beta tapes. We bought VHS tapes. We bought CEDs. When Laserdisc came out, we started buying those. Obviously DVD, Blu-ray. My parents were always very much into physical media. They had a large amount of books, records, movies. My mom always bought the newest tech to watch movies. So it's ingrained in me, with buying physical media and preserving it and having it. So it's from the horse's mouth, is the short thing to say, is that everything we're doing, it's because we come from that background of loving it. We're bigger collectors, and I don't like using the term collector, because it's like people that collect stamps where they just like put them in a book and never watch them. We're movie enthusiasts, so like we actually watch what we buy.
Mhm.
I don't really care for the term collecting, because it's always weird to me. Like my dad collected baseball cards. Like you collect baseball cards, you put them in an album and you just stow them away and you never look at them.
Mhm.
Which I know collectors do that. They just buy things to let it sit on a shelf. But whatever. Watch the movies, please. Crack them open. Don't leave them sealed in plastic. But the whole point of that is that, we are the ones that buy that stuff. We are bigger fans probably than most people of the physical media. People are sitting there like, oh, we get excited over Severin announcements. I am too. I watch all that shit. I get super excited. I buy from Diabolic DVD all the fucking time. Foreign releases, whatever. I love what Second Sight does. I'm a huge fan of that stuff. I take pictures sometimes of my, my movie rooms and everything. I have a ton of shit. I buy records every goddamn day.
Mhm.
So we know what the people like because we are the people.
Yeah,
We are the fans.
I love it. I love it. That's the perfect way to end it. Um, Brad, tremendous success to you, and we'll see you and your every Tuesday, what Terror Tuesdays, and see you online.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.